In our sleeve, we worked up, added our body, and worked over the shoulder, up and down, back and forth, until we have this big piece. Okay, now I added, for this sample, I added extra chains to make a longer, less cropped version, to try and just know how much yarn I need extra. So if you added extra chains, previously I stated that you need 20 chains for each 10 centimeter. Just make a little note of how many chains you added, because you will need to also add that to your panels when you do the front and the back. So we are ready to do the first back panel. You simply chain 2, turn, skip 1, single crochet, and do your linen stitch. But now you will do it only over the back of your sweater. So let's just, there's my yarn that's attached. I'll simply chain 2 and turn my work, and now I'll do my linen stitch. Chain 2, that's my first space. So there's my single, chain 1, skip 1, single, chain 1, skip 1, single. And you do this all the way until you reach the amount of stitches stated in the pattern. So for my size, it's 86 stitches, so it will end on a single crochet. If you added those extra stitches, the way you work it out is your total amount of stitches going from the back all the way across to the front. I've got 232 stitches at the moment because I added those extras. So you divide that by 2, which gives you half of your sweater, in my case 116, and you take minus 4 stitches because you need a little bit for that ribbing at the back. So if you added any amount of stitches, you take your total amount of stitches, divide it by 2, and that answer you minus 4 stitches to get the amount of stitches you have to do for the back panel. If you didn't add any stitches, any chains, then you simply do for small 80, for extra small 80 as well, and so on and so forth. So you simply work across for the first back panel, work your slips, or your linen stitch, chain 1, skip 1, single in the space, chain 1, skip 1, single in the space, however many there is. Then you chain 2, turn your work, that counts as a space, skip that first single, single, chain 1, skip 1, and you do this for a specific number of rows, adding that back panel. So this is the panel that I finished. So now this will be my left sleeve. What you need now is the front on this one. So this was your first back panel. It will either be your left or your right one. It doesn't matter. It's just called first back panel or first front panel. So to do the first front panel, you have to skip. Let's just see. If your back panel is lying towards your right, so the right side is facing you and your back panel is lying towards the right. So there's the rest of the sweater. Front. This is my shoulder mark. Now there. You have to skip 25 stitches from the back panel and place a marker in that next chain space. So this is what we'll do. Single, and in that next space you will do your standing single crochet. I prefer to do a slip knot on my hook. And then insert in that space, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, make sure they're even, yarn over and pull through both. This is my first single crochet. So now I want to chain one and place a marker, and then skip one single crochet all the way across. So chain one and place my marker in that chain one. Skip the next single crochet, single, chain one, skip one, all the way to your hem. So I've worked all the way down to my hem. If you added stitches for body length, make a little note of how many stitches you did now for this front panel, because you'll need it for your second front panel. Otherwise you'll just have the same amount of stitches as the pattern states. So you chain two, you turn your work, which is quite big at this stage, skip that first one, single, chain one, skip one, single, okay. Done my chain one, skip one, and here's my marker. I'm going to place my last single crochet in that stitch, so you have one stitch less than the previous row. Now on row 3 of this panel, we won't chain, we simply turn, we skip the first single and we single in the next space. So turn your work, skip that single and single in the next space. Chain one where we move our marker, skip the next single and single crochet in the next space. You do this all the way across, and coming back you do the same, you repeat row 2 and 3. This is where I did my standing single crochet, worked down to the hem, came back up, down, and each row you have one stitch less. So that's a single crochet, that's the next row. The next one will be a little bit harder to see. There's the next one, next. There's the 8th one. So I've done that last stitch. The marker was right there. Now you simply chain 2 and turn, skip that first one and do your linen stitch across. So you're going to chain 2, turn your work and skip that first single crochet, single in that space, chain 1, skip 1 and single in the space all the way to the bottom of the hem. Coming back up, you will now place your last single crochet in that chain 2 space. So effectively you are now working straight. Second sleeve, to add, you will add your first will add your front panel and then your back panel. So it's the reverse of your other side of your sweater. So on the first half you'd start with the back panel, simply go straight into the back panel, then we break our yarn and reattach it for the front panel. On the second side we do the first the front panel, break our yarn and go on to the back panel. So to do our front panel, I'm at the hem of my work going up towards the neckline. So I'll chain 2 and turn my work, do my linen stitch or moss stitch, single in that space, chain 1, skip the single, single in the next space. So I will do this until I have 1 stitch less than my first front panel. So I made a little note. I did 95 stitches on my first front panel, so I will do 94 on this second front panel. So from that stitch on the last row of the body, you count 25 stitches, single crochet, chain 1, every single and chain is counted as a stitch, and in the next space you attach your marker, which will be where we start our second back panel going towards the hem. It's just easier for me. You don't have to do that, but you can just count it when you finish your front panel, but I like to just do that to make life easier. So now on our second row, we are doing the same type of decrease that we did on our first front panel. So it's simply going to turn, do not chain, and we will single in that first space right there, single, then chain 1 where we will place our marker, skip 1 and single in the next space, and we do this across the row. Coming back up with our third row, we will place our last single in that chain space, excluding this 1 stitch, so effectively losing 1 stitch in our count, and then in the next row we repeat this decrease. We do this only for 7 rows, not 8 as the first, because we have that 1 stitch less, and then we will do the linen stitch, chain 2, turn, skip 1, single crochet in that space until we have the same total amount of rows as our first front panel, and we are ready to attach our yarn. So it says attach yarn with a slip stitch in the next space. There's that space. I insert my hook, grab my yarn and simply slip stitch in that space. Now chain 2, which will count as your first space, and then we skip 1 and we single in the next. So let's do that. Chain 2, skip that single crochet and single in the next space. Now for just this first row of the back panel, I do prefer to put a little stitch marker in that chain space to just remind me that that's the end of my row coming back towards the top. So this is the neck edge. I'm working towards the hem at the bottom. So chain 1, skip 1, single. I'm just working away that tail as I go. And for the back panel, you get to the end of the row with a single crochet, you simply do moss stitch. So you chain 2, turn, skip that first single, single crochet in the space, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet all the way across, and your last single crochet will be placed in this chain 2 that you marked. You do this for 16 or 18 rows, and the amount of stitches will be the same as on your other